I'll give you a quick summary.
All right.
Jock to doc to geek. That's my life.
Welcome to another presentation from the CV Academics Foundation, home of the AMP Honors Program.
Hi, AMP Honors Program. This is Dr. Drew Palin. Your header in your resume was a bold healthcare entrepreneur with rare expertise encompassing clinical medicine and information technology and medical devices, founding CEO, chief medical officer, and chief innovation officer for numerous successful startups. So there is, I guess, your chosen summary.
Yeah, is my nose growing yet?
I don't see it. I don't see any difference yet. We'll see as the video goes. So I want to go way back to the start. So you had sent me a little profile with the East Los Angeles College, which I noticed in that list of the highlights. MC Hammer was also on that list, so that was kind of funny to see. And so that was kind of where you started your post high school career. Is that right?
Yeah. So I'll tell the short version. Okay. So after high school, I wasn't sure I wanted to go to college because I didn't do that well in high school. I went to a large LA public school, and out of a class of 1,000, I graduated somewhere in the middle of the class with a nice C+ average. So I worked construction. I started doing sandblasting, spray painting in LA where I grew up. It was pretty hard, dirty work. So I thought, well, hey, going back to school might not be a bad idea. It'd be easier than this. So I went back to a local junior college with really no clear idea of what I wanted to do other than play sports. But in the course of taking a range of different kind of courses, I took an anatomy course. And, I was kind of a goofball, so I often got asked to stay after class throughout my school career. And so the professor asked me to stay after class. I go, okay, here it goes again. And this was a professor who was, at that time, probably 60, 65, a kind of a smart, crotchety old guy teaching anatomy class. And we had cat cadavers. And of course, I was playing with those and having fun with the cat cadavers. But he said, Drew, you're really pretty smart. If you wanted, you could be a doctor. You've got what it takes. And that had never occurred to me, never really occurred to me. It was interesting because I got exposed to medicine early in high school because I had a very unusual hip injury and had to have surgery in high school. And, it was a long recovery period. But he kind of lit a little fire. He put a spark to the fire. And actually, someday I'm going to write a book about these things. I call them trivial pivotal moments. It was a 5-minute discussion, but it changed my view of what was possible for me. So I said, well, hey, let me try this. Let me see if I got a brain. So, I started studying and applying myself and was able to get good enough grades. And at that time, I was fortunate enough to be a good enough athlete that people wanted me to come and play for their team. So I got an athletic scholarship, and I couldn't have got into the school on my high school academics or my scores, but the combination of my grades in junior college and my athletic stuff, I was able to get into Stanford. And what was interesting about that is I completed a major in biology. But again, at the end of Stanford, I applied to medical school, didn't get in anywhere. And I said, well, maybe, do you really want to go into medicine? So I said, well, maybe you should figure that out before you, go to all the effort. So I took 3 years off between college and medical school, and I volunteered a lot. I worked in a primary care office. I helped start up a consumer-owned and operated HMO. I headed up a health education committee. I did a lot of kind of probably 20, 30 hours of volunteer work a week while waiting tables and playing rugby. So it wasn't a bad life. And what that kind of exposed me to was, no, I really do like medicine. It's interesting to me, but I think if I was a nurse or nutritionist or exercise physiologist, I'd have a pretty well-defined narrow scope. But as a physician, I felt I had a much broader area of things I could be involved in. So I went to medical school with the intention of doing primary care and having a broad range of things to do. But again, a pivotal moment makes a difference. And so I talk about these because I know, the people you're talking to are trying to make decisions. And sometimes things come to you. So it happened to be that the team physician for the Stanford football team was an alumni of Mayo. And he knew I was very interested in medicine. And, I got to know him a little bit. And so I didn't get in anywhere the first time. So I couldn't go back and take my classes, and taking classes at Stanford and playing football was a pretty big load. So I studied 2 years straight for the MCATs. I mean, I just put my head down and I retook the MCATs and did very well on them. So between those MCATs and someone making a phone call for me saying, hey, take a look at this guy. He's willing to work hard. I know that, that opened a door to me that had previously been closed. And so it really was a combination of me experimenting with myself to convince myself of what I wanted to do, and then having a few intermittent people really have confidence in me and faith in me and support me. And that's really the cornerstone of my career, is having those things happen. And then since that time, I've just done a wide range of things because, as I knew going forward, I like new challenges. Anytime something becomes routine, I'm ready for the next challenge. And so I've been able to do that. But, to your point, if you look at my resume, it looks kind of disjointed. It's a wide range of things. Well, the theme throughout it, and even in the beginning of my career, was I wanted to find ways to improve healthcare. And for me, as a physician, you can do a great job of treating patients one at a time, which I love doing, and I love the patient interaction. But ultimately, if you develop a good medical device or a good computer algorithm or a good AI platform or something like that, you can touch thousands, millions of patients, and you can improve a process and a system. So, what my career has been dedicated is different endeavors to try and improve healthcare.
Yeah. And
You asked me one question, I just gave you my whole life story.
I mean, you made my job easy though. I didn't have to read any of that stuff. So I appreciate it. And we'll try to touch on some of those ways that you tried to impact healthcare throughout the interview and moving forward as well. So I want to just try to take it maybe by a timeline perspective that might be easiest to kind of digest as a viewer. So you graduated from Stanford, you got into Mayo Clinic School of Medicine after a couple of gap years, it sounds like, and then went on to become a fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine, served as a sports medicine physician for Olympic gold medalists, speed skaters, Major League Baseball, Milwaukee Brewers.
Way back in the day. Robin Yount, Paul Molitor.
There we go. The GOATs. On your resume, it just feels like a list of founding CEO and an investor, and founding CEO and investor, all that kind of stuff. And I think angel investing was like a kind of a, I don't know what the word is, like a trigger for me. And I listened to Tim Ferriss is his name. He's a podcaster, but he's always talking about his angel investing and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see, or to ask you, like, how did you get into that kind of thing? Was that always like kind of in the back of your mind, or was it something that just kind of happened organically?
Well, it often happened out of necessity. I mean, you can have bold, big ideas, but sometimes it takes time to prove that to your customers or investors. So if you're starting a company, it's called family and friends money, which really means the people that started have to kind of find the funds to get it going. So a number of those companies I actually started from ground zero. So it was kind of the mother necessity. I became an angel investor. But what I found over time too is that, I've read a lot of financial books and investing books, and, power of compounded interest, and, investing in index funds and all things they tell you, which is correct. But I found that I actually did better as an investor if I invested in companies that I knew and understood. I knew the people and I understood the product in the market. So all the investments I've done from an angel standpoint, I either know the executive team, or I clearly understand the product, or I'm involved in it. And that continues to today.
I want to know about this. So I saw that you invented a patented weightlifting machine that was used in the Olympics. What kind of,
Well,
what,
it's used in training for the Olympics. So speed skaters have legs like tree trunks, but they got backs the size of twigs. all their conditioning is lower extremity.
Mm.
And to really challenge the lower extremity, they were doing squats, but they didn't have the core strength and the back strength to do that. So I invented a way to put a belt around their waist and run a pulley and a weight and blah, 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 so that they could get good resistance work with their lower extremities without putting stress on their back that was not capable of handling it.
Interesting. Could you describe maybe a day in the life of your role now as the chairman and chief innovation officer at Intellivisit? That's correct? That's what you're in right now?
Right.
Okay.
So it's a startup about 4 years old, and we use AI to conduct a dynamic medical interview, either through a medical assistant or through the patient themselves. So if you say, I've got a headache, it'll ask you questions relative to headache and other body systems, or my back hurts or burns when I urinate. So it'll do a very thorough medical interview and come up with a differential diagnosis. So it's a AI platform that's taken years to develop, and now we're just kind of commercializing it to support urgent care providers. As with the other things I've talked about, my role is kind of mixed. I'm fundraising, I'm doing AI, and I do some work with customers and strategic partners. And then what I do as chief innovation officer is I'm trying, to the hockey analogy, I'm trying to skate to where the puck's going to be. What do we want to incorporate next? What's coming down the line? What do we need to do to continue to have some sort of competitive advantage? What's going to make us better?
Wear a lot of hats, it sounds like.
Right.
It seems like being an entrepreneur in general and just your specific role requires so much like self-confidence almost, and just kind of a belief in yourself and the work that you're able to do and that you're able to kind of foster.
Self-delusion might be a better term.
Well, it's gotten you to this interview at least. So, you made it.
Yeah. I made it to the top of the heap. I'm talking to Riley.
Okay. So maybe this might be a tough question. There's been so many different roles you've had, but if you could pick a favorite, maybe a favorite role or a favorite aspect of a certain role and a least favorite aspect of a certain role that you've had throughout your career.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's been favorite for me to date, and I still hope I have some runway. I started Competitive Edge in 1986 or something like this, and I started it with one other physical therapist. So it was myself and another physical therapist. In 1986, I opened a sports medicine clinic, and at that time, sports medicine was a domain of orthopedists only. So, I got a lot of pushback, a lot of skepticism. You're primary care, you can't do sports medicine. Well, not all sports medicine surgery. There's diagnosis, there's conditioning, there's rehab, there's physiology. There's a whole range of things that go into sports medicine. So I did everything but the surgery. And I started that with two people, and over, 4 or 5 years, we grew it to 10 clinics and 110 employees. And I set it up so that employees could be owners. Anybody could buy shares, and everybody paid the same amount for shares. And so we had a great team, and under one roof in Milwaukee in the early 90s, and Milwaukee is a very conservative medical community. I grew up in LA, which is not as conservative by any means. I had under one roof physical therapists, athletic trainers, massage therapists, physiologists, chiropractor, acupuncturists, all practicing together as a team to help patients recover, whatever discipline, whatever technique was going to help them the most. And that was very, very effective. So we had a great team, and the clinic did well. And then when hospitals started acquiring physician practices, which started happening in the 90s, we sold it because we were dependent on physician referrals, and those were being determined by their ownership, not the quality of medicine. And all the shareholders who were physical therapists, athletic trainers, did very well. So that was a great team experience and a team success. So that's the role I've enjoyed the most.
And then can you pick a least favorite, maybe moment or role that you've had? I don't know. I know you don't have to name any names, obviously, or anything, but just maybe some struggle that you faced.
Yeah, I think the hardest part, I'll give you two hard parts. The medical hard part for me was always documentation. I loved seeing the patients. I loved interacting with them. I did a good job with them. And then I'd have to go dictate or transcribe or fill out a form, so that was the bane of my existence. And as a business person, the hardest part for me for sure has been having to fire people. Sometimes you have to let people go, not because they're bad people, because the business isn't doing well and you can't afford it. And so you got to downsize or right size, whatever you want to call it. And sometimes that requires you to let good people go. And that's a very, very difficult thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have never fired anyone, but I can imagine. The documentation one it's a low hanging fruit. I've heard that one too much. So I'm glad you brought another one into it, because I want to get out with that one.
The beautiful thing about the platform we're working on now with Intellivisit is the patient answers all the questions and we automatically document. So the physician just has to, yeah, that's right, or edit it, boom, done.
Right.
So no transcribing, no scribe, no dictation. It's done.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with the AMP Honors Program regarding your current role, or maybe the medical field in general, or the business side of things, I guess, or any words of advice you might have for them? You've already shared a few, but if you have anything else.
Yeah, I would say that one of the things I have tried to teach my kids and people I work with is if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any. Because if you're trying to do too many things at once, none of them get done. So if you're really trying to figure out your career, take your time to get some exposure to things you think you'll like and figure out if you really do like them before you invest a lot of time in them. And then if you do like them, it's easier to invest the time, and then you'll figure out where you want to go from there. So if you don't want to overcomplicate it, experiment with yourself, figure out what you like, then work hard at what you like. Those are the 3 priorities.
I like it. And it goes with our kind of mantra here. We trying to expose our students to a wide range of things in the healthcare field, and then they can kind of pick and choose what they think is interesting and go from there.
Yeah, the other thing I'll just say in passing, because I'm such a geek, is there's going to be increasing intersection and integration between technology and medicine. AI is going to play a huge role in the future. So if you have an interest in medicine and technology, it's a good combination.
100%. Yeah. Do you have any resources, maybe podcasts or books or websites or anything like that, newsletters maybe, that you really like and would recommend some of the students or even myself?
I have a couple. Let me email them to you because I can't quote them off the top of my. So I'll email them to you.
Okay. Yeah, I can include them in our description of the video and the post and everything. Perfect. Well, thanks so much again. It was great meeting you, and hope to interact with you and get to know you a little bit more as we move forward. And good luck with everything with Intellivisit and everything else that comes forward.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to stay involved for quite a while. But I have more behind me than I have in front of me, but I'm all good. So very nice to meet you, Riley. And you know how to find me if you got a question.
This has been a presentation of the CV Academics Foundation, home of the AMP Honors Program.